once again, and good afternoon, everyone. After the lunch break, we are back with another panel discussion over here, and we have another set of speakers who are ready to go ahead and boom with you or with all the information and the ideas on the next topic of automation for enterprises scaling IA RPA to cross functions. So we have the panelists as Kersi, Tavadia. He's the CIO, Bombay Stock Exchange. We also have Muralikrishnan B, COO, Xiaomi India. We also have Amit Saxena, Global Deputy CTO of SBI. Welcome, everyone. And we have the moderator here, Ashutosh Kapoor, Director of Microsoft. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. And over to you, Ashutosh, sir. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Anupam. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, the panelists. So, as you know, that this is quite an elite panel. We have people who have actually embarked on the journey of automation, and we are here to discuss their experience, and hopefully this will be something very useful to the cross audience that we have of people who have not started the journey and the people who are ahead in the journey. I'm sure there is a bit of learning for everyone. I must tell you that the reason why you see Microsoft here is because Microsoft Power Automate is the RPA product line, which was essentially Softomotive earlier and UI Flow, and integrated to become the entire product line of Power Automate. Hopefully you heard the session in the morning. So without further ado, I will start the session, and over the next 15 minutes, next 45 odd minutes, I would be touching on the kind of use cases and processes that enterprises look for, what are the kind of pitfalls one should be wary of, and most importantly, what are the people skills and anything else that you need to look for. So let me start with you, Murli. So at Xiaomi India, what were the... Murli, can you hear me? Yeah, so at Xiaomi India...
yeah, I can hear loud and clear. Go ahead.
What were the problems that you were encountering as an enterprise which made you look towards automation as a possible solution? If you can share some inputs to our audience, then it will be very nice to start.
Certainly. Thanks, Ashutosh, and good afternoon, everybody. Hoping to make this a super engaging session and learning for everybody, including me. To go back to the question that Ashutosh posed on what were the circumstances that led to Xiaomi India even contemplating an automation journey. So here's the context. So early last year, when we were about 5 years young in India, thus far we've been having a very, very good ride. Right, the business has grown manyfold to become the #1 smartphone brand in the country, launching multiple categories, including televisions and water purifiers and whatnot, getting into multiple categories and expanding across channels. Earlier, we were primarily an online focused business and then expanded to the offline channel and have like about 12,000-13,000 retail outlets across the country. So here's this interesting mix, right? There's a rapidly growing business. You're expanding across multiple categories. You're expanding across multiple channels, and you're also growing in terms of people. What that essentially meant was, given the rapid pace of growth, a whole host of things that we were doing were fairly people intensive, were manual in nature. And over a period of time, everybody would realize when you have such a rapid pace of growth, when you keep doing a whole bunch of things manually, and this could be, processing purchase orders, invoicing, managing stock allocation across warehouses, reconciliation of, let's say, partner invoices, let's say logistics invoices, a lot of that was happening manually. And it came to a point where, hey, for a multi-billion-dollar business, if some of these core processes are being done manually, something is going to break sooner or later. Right? Or the manual processes, the people are good. The problem is never the people. Just that the problem was there's just so much high-touch work that's happening, it's going to hinder growth. It is going to hold you back. And that's when we put on the thinking hat and said there has to be a way out. And in all honesty, it was not like a multi-pronged strategy by a consulting team which got us down the RPA path. It was pure will to experiment, saying here's the problem statement. There is structured data, there are processes, there is human intensive, and there are multiple tools. Can RPA help me is how we started. And the rest, at least in the near term, is a little bit of a history, and I'd love to tell more stories about it. But in simple terms, we were faced with like the growth conundrum. We just grew way too fast, whole bunch of manual processes, and hence, in the spirit of experimentation, we said maybe RPA is the answer, and in hindsight, it turned out quite well.
That's nice. So this is a classic story of automation in retail and segments like those where logistics plays a very important role. And bots, I have seen people using WhatsApp bots to just respond, and the queries and the basic things drop substantially by thereafter. So I will want to continue on the same thought process, but in a very different industry. So let me come to you, Kersi. You are you're managing the technology backbone of one of the largest organizations of the stock exchange, and it's, I mean, I shudders to think what kind of queries, what kind of load you may be having, especially in the trading hours. But tell us what made you look at automation. We can't hear you. You are on mute, Kersi.
Yeah, hi. Good afternoon, everybody,
Sorry.
and thanks for having me on this panel. I'd like to share some of our experiences. And like I was hearing what Murli said, we had a very similar problem about the number of processes that we start. Like in a typical stock exchange, when the market starts, so normally public's assumption it will be one trading system. You just click something and the system starts. Ideally, the
Yeah.
system consists of 60 to 70 different applications, and they have to be all started in a particular manner. There's so many checksums in place before the market starts, and we were doing this manually every time, and the things were working fine. But as the markets started, more and more markets were coming into levies. We were first doing only equities, then we started with the derivatives market, then the currency market, the commodities market. The processes in each of them remains the same. The manual effort, whether it is a small market or a big market, remains the same. So at least if I started 4 markets, I had to have 4x of the people, right? Because all markets have to start at the same time, right? So it's not that
Correct.
something starts in the morning, something. So we had no choice but to look at okay, how do we automate this kind of stuff, and because there was one is that the cost of employing more people, and the second most important thing is the accuracy and the errors, because in a stock market there's a zero tolerance of any error, single error, and you cannot have a market starting at 9:01. It has to start at 9:00:00. So that with that kind of precision, there is no question of any error creeping into the system, and that is the time when we had thought, okay, let's. Though the people are very intelligent, people are very dedicated, we thought of how do we automate and use instead of putting more people, we started putting in more tools, and now the same people manage these tools. So it's a complete 360-degree turnaround that we have achieved right now. So now the people are used in exceptions rather than routine. The automation part does all the processes of all the BOD processes, and these guys are there if the process, and every automation will come with its own set of problems. So it's not that always easy. There will be exceptions now and then in the systems. So their job is now, instead of starting the market and doing the operation, they have to look for exceptions within the processes. So their job profiles have totally
Okay.
changed.
But
So this
Kersi,
is
I
how
want to do
we.
just a quick follow-up question on what you are saying about the processes. The very fact that you had so many processes, and probably like most of them would be a good candidate for automation. How do you decide? I mean, it is not just a science and a gut feel. Did you deploy something? How did you decide what processes are the ones that you will automate first? Because probably ROI and other factors would also come in.
Yeah, so for us, it was very, I would say there is no rocket science, let me put it that way. There's no rocket science or big names to be given to this. It is very simple that how can I make my life of an operator easy? I mean, we followed a very simple basic is how can I make the life and the errors. So we followed okay, which had the manual maximum amount of clicks that you have to do, because it is not only a text based, like some of the systems were when they were developed, the control system, they were GUI based systems also, and there are certain systems which are run on the command line. So so we had a heterogeneous uh, kind of a platform. It was not that we could. I think so. The automation was even happening even in the prior days before we called this RPA. The big names came into the picture. Like when people used to write batch files, like in Linux. I mean, people like us, like older guys, like we are used to writing command lines, and we used to write scripts for running jobs. So even those was called automation. But then it was referred to a single system. Single, say it was earlier the systems were quite vertical driven. It was not horizontally scaled. Right now, whereas in these cases, like we have to start system A and then check the parameter in the system B is getting the feed or not. If the system is not, then again check. So it is a correlation between so many systems that come into play. So that's why we had to take these kind of systems first. See what was there in a batch file concept were anyway running. So it was like a native product, a good product, but it was also doing something. But what was not there was the GUI based things where you click so many screens are changing and all this and interrelation correlation between the systems. I think that this is the kind of things where we put in the effort and considerable effort was put in into that. So it was not, I would say, it's not a easy thing to do, but it's definitely painful, but it's really worth it. Like I would say.
So thanks, Percy, for that. Let me turn to Amit. There's a very different industry, not very different, but at least a very different industry from virtue of RPA, because one of the highest users of automation in India is the banking segment. State Bank of India being one of the biggest, and Amit, I'm sure, would be driving this to an extent. So I would want to know your view as well on two things quickly in terms of how did you decide, what were the problems, how did you decide, and then did you resolve those problems?
So I would take it, and thank you very much, and good afternoon to everybody over the panel and the speaker people who are listening to this. State Bank of India, we are 211 years young, not very old, right? And our problems are a bit different, right? And when it comes for automation and banking industry has especially SBI have undergone a transformation itself for last couple of years itself, right? So at that time we decided that there are a lot of things which can be done without a human intervention and how we should use the tool set, etc. So in last couple of years we have gone through that journey, and what we have seen is it's it our problem areas are with respect to couple of things I would put across. First is the reconciliation itself. So if you see every transaction, if you have done a debit, then somebody has to look at it whether it has reached over there, and it used to be a manual exercise earlier. Then there was some system which have been built in, and then now whole of the ecosystem wherein we have to integrate with WhatsApp, Google Pay, and other systems also. They keep their system of records of the transaction, right? So if we keep on getting all these transactions to us, and then we start doing it what we call as a three-way kind of reconciliation, then it becomes very hard for us to do it in through a script basis also, because the number of transactions are very huge. Just to give our audience what we are talking of, we are a bank who have got 490 million customers and 760 million account. There's no other example across the world with respect to our size, right? And I'm only talking of India business, wherein we have got 39 different countries also where we have got operations. That's a different thing altogether. And so we have to do it. So we said ki we'll do an automation, right? So we started using things which we should be able to very quickly identify. Okay, the debit done, the credit lag is also done, and the CBS also confirmed that this has been debited successfully, right? And there are multiple steps in between, and I do not want to take up time to talk about it. It's not that simple. So it's a crisscross kind of a thing, because if it's a different type of a transaction, because they are different system, right? But it's still at the end of the day, it's a debit or credit transaction. So if your loan account is getting credited, or your SI is being done, or your mandate is being processed, right? So those all are being considered as a different type of a debit or a credit transaction in banking parlance, right? So we have gone through over there and we have automated that thing. That is one part of the story. The other part of the story is that the regulators, the business who have to ask for different reports at a very quick time, the turnaround what is being given. And if you try extracting those reports, and they do not want only the report, they want the analytics built onto this. So along with automation, we have to put in analytics also, engine also in place. For example, telling our business team how many transactions have happened for a particular region, particular area, which area of the country is having more loans transaction, which area of the country. So we have put in a lot of other things. As we move along, we'll touch upon those points. Thank you very much, Ash.
Yeah, great. Amit, good to know this because the size of operations will be mammoth. Number of people who have accounts, if they do 2 or 3 transactions a week, I can only imagine. I will go back to Murli again for a very important question on the return of investments. How do you, most organizations would be looking at any investment has to be justified to especially the CFO. So how do you, what is the benchmark? Is it gut feel, or is it that conviction that it will pay off in the long run? Or do you have any other way to look at the benchmark of ROI?
Interesting question, and I'll tell you what. This is the same with so many other initiatives and various organizations. It's not just restricted to RPA. And here's the way I see it. So there is a horse and there is a cart. Can you put the cart before the horse? Perhaps not. And therefore, the first thing to do is look: can you, as an organization, at least at a leadership level, build that experimentation mindset, right? Have the willingness, the ability, and of course, the drive to go experiment with a few things. Now, it's not going to cost you like millions of dollars in your budget. It's not perhaps not even going to account for like more than 0.5% of your budget. But can you set aside something and ask a couple of young folks to say, boss, we are trying to do it, right? Why don't you go ahead, try and experiment with a couple of these things? It's okay to fail, right? There's absolutely no problem in failing with some of these, but the upside of getting these right will probably pay off much better. I mean, think like a venture capitalist in that.
Exactly.
Point number one. Point number two: one or two key people who are driving these initiatives need to have a techno-commercial mindset, right? So RPA as an initiative, automation as an initiative, if it's purely driven by the technology team, if it's purely driven by the IT team, etc., there would be a certain ability for it to be successful. On the other hand, if it's driven purely by the operations team, if it's driven purely by the business team, there would be another probability of success. However, if let's say the core committee, right, if the governing team has a combination of these skill sets, or if the leader himself or herself is able to bring both of these together, that again substantially increases the probability of success, right? And the process we followed was, of course, we tried the NPV modeling. It's not that we did not, but we got the teams to work on the NPV modeling, knowing fully well it's based on a whole bunch of assumptions in which we could be wildly wrong. And it's okay to be candid with yourself first and then with your teams and your finance head, saying, look, these are a bunch of assumptions. There is a high chance this could be wrong, but this is the best that I can do if you want to be satisfied on the NPV, right? Give this team the opportunity to experiment. Give them a period of 3 to 6 months. If you see early shoots of success, then you come back and put more money behind this. Else, we can chop and change. Ashutosh and team, look up. I believe this kind of experimentation mindset with emerging technologies and a workforce which also has an open mind to experiment is what can work, right? Otherwise, we'll spend 6 to 9 months, 12 months on the drawing board, designing stuff, convincing people, convincing the board, convincing the leadership, and at the end of it, the process would be so draining. It would take so long that the effort might not be worth it, right? The problem is gone, right? You have a problem today. You have to solve it today through agility, through an experimentative mindset. That's where I will come.
I agree with you 200% because in the last 3 or 4 years that I've been in part of the journey of RPA, I have seen the organizations where automation succeeded was always a domain domain champ, which means either a CFO or a CHRO or a CEO who would lead it rather than the CIO. But it's obviously both that matter, technology and domain function. So I go back to Kersi now to understand. You stopped on, Murli stopped on the issue of workforce, and I want to take on from there. Given that this is a technology that had a lot of rumors and just unestablished facts saying that, oh, this may take away jobs, which is never the case though. Did you find any people issues, or how did you get the skilling part done? How do you any other things that you came across in terms of organizational issues?
Let me put it that way. There were no organizational issues, but generally when something like this comes, it's like typically the fear of unknown. It's like it's typically the mindset it starts. Okay, so it was very typical that, like I said, we had so many systems. So we said, who will be the first candidate who can, because to start this, like a lot of people had this mindset, okay, we are better off manually. So what's the need to automate? So that means, am I inefficient? See that mindset of the officers. So that fear always comes. Okay, that means you are trying to bring in something where you are trying to make me redundant, and that was the big mindset issue. So there was a lot of reluctance to give any inputs, because to that fellow to write a script, right? To in the automation, somebody should write the script, make the script. So you need, so without the operations team, that fellow cannot succeed, right? So we had this typical thing is the guy used to come and say, sir, I'm not getting inputs. I know what do I do? What do I do? Because he cannot say. And then it was like typical, you blame him and let him decide. I am sitting and let him see what he wants to see. So this kind of parsing the information. But some people then came out and then everybody said, okay, we don't want to be there. Okay. So when we first started with, one of the teams volunteered and they did. So we first started in basically we experimented in doing our DR drills. Like I said, okay, when you're doing from automation, we have put the automation in doing our bringing up our DR sites. Like you bring down the PR in case something happens. How do you automatically bring up the PR? Because like I explained, we had a huge setup, and when we were doing a DR drill initially, we had at least 100 people working overnight, and we 7-8 hours of working, and so much of intense pressure on the team. Even with 100 people, we knew something is going wrong. When they started, "Ye nahi chalu hua, check this," people yell, shout. I mean, that feeling on the floor was very different. So when you said at least first person can we move out, and so everybody tried to find out and said, okay, this fellow is a scapegoat. Aap isse chalu karo, like no. Why don't you try with this? And that guy also voluntarily said, okay, fine, I will do it. Then
But now
when they saw the success, okay, then everybody starts feeling, अरे why मुझे क्यों नहीं पहले select किया? I should have also started. But it is like you need, somebody has to set up that example. So it's always like once people see the success and this, and now it's like a queue. Like every process when they starts, and now it's come to a level that people come out is first. Okay, why should I do it manually? आप automation क्यों नहीं करवाते?
Yeah, so this is what I have
So
encountered always.
this is the whole mindset of people also change. Okay, why should I do it? Like so many complex processes where now I tell them to automate and give it. So I am not responsible if something goes wrong. So that the same people who are so diligent and doing so many things, and now with it
Yeah,
seeing that
because I
expectation
think
also has risen.
smart organizations have changed the discussion from threat of the job to upskilling of the present employees, which becomes like a
Yeah.
career move for them. And that has succeeded. So great, well put. I will come back to you on another topic very soon on the OCR part. But let me, I know that SBI is a very forms and paper-driven organization which requires a lot of scanning of forms, unstructured data. So Amit, I want to understand from you this whole gamut of AI that we talk about. What part of it goes, because automation by itself has no relevance unless the unstructured to structuring of the data happens through whether OCR or sentiment analysis or image processing, whatever. Anything that you use in SBI?
So I would touch upon these points quickly into giving you a couple of examples itself. So what we have done in last 3 years, we have developed a full digital bank, what we call as you only need one, and using that you can open your account itself right online. You don't need to visit a branch ever itself. Now then, what happened to all those paper which people are using for opening the account? We have put in a OCR solution over there, but OCR is a technology which exists for 2 decades and it's over there. And so we do an OCR, put those documents, and they have got a 80-85% of a kind of a success rate, which means there is still a human intervention which needs to be put in. So what we did, we said, okay, let's do one thing. We'll find out using a machine learning technique what's a failure rate, which fields have got more failure rate. So the best part what you do is to test such system is you crumble a account opening form and then say let's do an OCR for that, and let us see how much of a optical character recognition it's able to do. And as it's an ongoing journey, the number of accounts which we have, as I told you, is like 791 million account. And so we are trying to do it for the pace, at whatever pace we are trying to do, right? It's still going to take a lot of time. And there comes in a picture the machine learning part of it, right? For sentiment analysis, and Ashutosh, I'm not sure, but everybody have got one SBI account for sure itself. We serve out of 3 people, one account is with SBI, right? And so if you have taken a mortgage and you have taken a car loan, etc., right? So how I'm serving you for that? On our platform, we are building up a sentiment analysis and trying to see. So you may not travel right now, but next time when you would be traveling and you would be landing on a international airport coming back to India, you would get a notification on your app saying that we are offering you a free massage of 300 rupees onto the this place where you are coming in. You must be tired, right? Whichever way you see it, right? North America to India is always a very long flight, whichever class you may be flying itself, right? So that way we are saying we would do a sentiment analysis. The second example of a sentiment analysis is if you are having all your investment with State Bank of India and you have got a grown up kid, a boy or girl who would be going for a higher studies, you are aspiring that the kids should be studying onto some higher studies outside of the country. We are ready to give a no mortgage loan for those education loan because we know you, right? That's the sentiment analysis what we are trying to put in on our, and these all are available on a platform, which means you don't need to approach bank is approaching you, right? And we know Ashutosh is a good person. He has been doing all these things.
Cross product upselling that we encounter in every industry. In our industry, we call it cross product
upselling. One last point which I would like to touch upon is that when your boy or girl is going to come out from graduation, we are going to give him or her a car loan or bike loan without mortgage attached. That's what we are talking about. We are working on to it. We are going to change the full customer experience with sentiment analysis. That's
great. So on the same topic of OCR, I also want to invite any of the Murli or Kersi talk about their experiences with any other AI technology, because just before you start, AI build is what Microsoft offers as a part of the. It is the only cloud-based AI or conference tool which allows you to do everything on a modular basis and a wallet basis. It is you get points and then you can use those points to decide whether I want to do form processing or card reader or image processing or sentiment analysis. There are not separate tools that you have to buy. So I see this market or this particular product well in demand. So I would love to hear from Murli and Kersi what part of AI do they infuse in their automation.
I'll jump in with, I'll try and make this thing really quick. After the initial success that we had with process automation, the concept and therefore so did the experimentation mindset. And we deployed a whole bunch of pilots on chatbots. The interesting thing with chatbots is it wasn't just customer support using chatbots. We figured intelligent use cases for chatbot also. We deployed an agent bot for the customer support agent to query the bot. Like typically what happens is you ping your team leader in case you don't know the answer. You ping the supervisor in case you don't know the answer and the customer is on a call. So there is an agent bot which picks from the knowledge base and gives answers to the customer support agent in case the agent doesn't know the answer. That's the second one that we started working on is even cooler. This is in the realm of Salesforce automation. What we are doing there is a data bot. Think of this: there's a sales guy. The sales guy is on the field and he's visiting a retail outlet. Right? Using geofencing, you identify the retail outlet and automatically flash the relevant dashboards on the person's mobile phone, saying this is the retail outlet, this is the last month performance, this is the current month performance, these are the product level performance, and here are the two things that you can focus on in your conversation. Um, we believe this could potentially be a game changer. This uses every 3 and 4 letter acronym in technology that you can talk about, right? But what matters is the ultimate application on how that changes the business, because you are empowering the guy in the last mile with data. And whether you call this artificial intelligence, human intelligence, for me, those terminologies are secondary. What matters here is you are using the best of technology to empower a sales guy to drive better sales where it matters the most. That I think is the true purpose of technology in any organization.
Very similar example is Coke or one of the beverage guys who just take a picture. The salesman can take a picture from the retail store of the number of bottles, etc. Can be, they will just, the AI tool will measure what is the stock and automatic what size it is, and then refill it accordingly. All those
That's
are big automation
that's on the
stories.
drawing board for us to solve for shelf space.
Sorry.
That's on the drawing board for us to
Yeah.
solve for shelf space in the retail outlet, because
Well,
you
your
want to
shelf space is much bigger for you, so it's taking time for again. But Kersi, how does this go for you, the AI build part for Bombay Stock Exchange?
So I will put it the other way, like whether it is AI or non-AI. Basically, we use in that sense for us AI. We use in a lot of other use processing part of it, like not in the typical operations, I would say, because when we do, so for example, rumor analysis that we do, but that I could call it more of a it's not an automation piece, but it's like more of an AI piece. Like what here we are talking about automation versus AI. That is an AI piece, but that's more into the
Hmm.
processing the business transactions. And like for example, if we collect feeds from all the Twitters, all the social medias, and if somebody is talking about a company, like no, we then the system automatically prompts and gives the report to the company secretary against whom, if it's a listed company, of course. Okay, this is what we have heard about this company. Is this matter true? So that it has to be put up on the website or reported onto the exchange, which they have not reported.
Yeah.
So this entire process which you have done, we use. I think that is where we are calling is our AI analysis, where we are translating and doing a huge amount of work in AI. Okay, so there we have done even language translations, and we even capture feeds, interviews when the people are talking. So we have converted speech to text, regional speech to English text, and then making out. See, we first started the framework and we converted to English and started making a AI English AI. Then to make it a step to each regional language thing, we converted to English and then understood that. So it's very difficult to do meanings and translations and all this, and that's how we try and come out with it. So that kind of work is immensely done on our. But I don't call this as an automation part of it. It's just like an AI process, like which helps collect feeds and so in that sense you can call it automation. But for us, like to us, an automation work is mere something which we are doing manually and which we are trying to automate. Like
Yeah,
that is
you're
where
talking about the phrase extraction and sentiment analysis features within the AI tools which are
tools.
available.
Yeah.
Look after a particular trade which talks about the emotions, etc. So, also before 1 second before I go forward, Anupam, I believe there are 5 more minutes left, 5 6 minutes more left. So, if there are any questions on the screen, just let us know for any panelists, and we can address those. Otherwise, I have
Sure.
one important topic to address before we close, and that is to do with the way technology is evolving on automation from on-premises to cloud, or from being just a fixed thing across a desktop to desktop RTA, and even now mobile app-based automation. I would love to hear those thoughts from any of you who wants to come in. This is an open question for anyone to take. Cloud versus on-prem versus mobile device apps. How do you see these technology changes happening? Do you see this impacting you at all? Can we start with you?
Yeah,
Kersi? Yeah.
I'll just put a perspective.
Yeah.
Let's be very clear that any process automation. Let's first take about the process and automating that process. If we make that design very clear, or the differentiation, we have to find an efficient process first in anywhere, whether it's running on prem, or whether it's running on a cloud, or whether it's running on a mobile device. Like if it's some process is involved in that, and automating that is a separate part of it. So always I say there has to be something which you want to automate. Okay,
Yeah.
so that could be anything. It could be a business process, it could be a production process, it could be a reconciliation process, whether you do it from mobile or something. So a lot of people see, unfortunately, we are living in the world of jargons also. So a lot of these big words people get misused and misrepresented or interchanged towards people's convenience. So that's why I always try to cut down on jargons and make it very simple. Whether so not using any big words over here. So let's give it whatever any process which helps your business to reduce your manpower, reduce your turnover, increase your efficiency, increase your productivity. I would call it as an efficient process. Now, how I achieve it is where I would use the tools, like whether I can do it manually or through some process or through some automation. So that's a very clear distinction. Now, whether I do this on cloud, mobile, or on-prem, it does not matter to me.
Okay. Any other thoughts, Murli or Amit?
I belong to the school of thought, similar school of thought as Kersi. For me, what tool you use, where is it deployed, are merely means to an end, right?
Yep.
I'm sure there are experts who can evaluate various situations and make the best suggestion. We started in a very small manner, like a small server inside the office, running stuff out of the desktops, and slowly things will scale, right? For me, these are decisions that will obviously come down the line, and there are experts who can guide us in this entire process. The one thing about our RPA journey, and I say that proudly and for the right reason, if we had chosen to do this alone, without the help of partners, and we've had good partners along the journey, if we had chosen to do this alone, I think the learning curve would have been way too steep, right? Frankly, looking back, I'm so glad that in the beginning itself, we chose a couple of partners and said, hey, take us through this journey, right? Run the first few projects for us. We will do the evangelization internally, but the entire process mapping, the bot scripting, the installation, the maintenance, the monitoring, the control systems, and so on and so forth, put this in place for us. Because otherwise, for me to hire people who know this and build up the team and do all of this myself is going to take way too.
I think Murli, your connection.
But of course, a lot.
Okay.
Sorry, you were saying something.
Your connection froze for a moment, but we heard most of it. So just as I close, I want to understand from Amit your last thoughts, especially around pitfalls. If you guys have anything to do, advise people who are now starting on journey, and what are the kind of pitfalls one should be wary of? What are the things that you should be ready to, mitigate rather than go over it, learn from others' experience, basically.
Right, and I would say, Ash, the first thing what we have seen and we have gone through it. If you have got a lot of systems which have got legacy data, first clear up your data. That's a humongous exercise depending on the size of your organization, right? It can take months to a year itself, because you put in an automation onto something and you keep on getting odd results which would throw you off the tangent itself, and trying to get a benefit, you keep on spending time in resolving those issues itself, and people tend to get frustrated, and then they start blaming the system. So what we say is, here, any of the CIOs or the CEOs who want to look at the data quality in your system, right? Whether it's good, and obviously there are enough examples within the industry that everybody have to go through that a learning curve of prior to go on automation, then start doing something. Start small, think big.
Humble words, and lofty ideas, both are important for a journey like this. So, any closing thoughts, Murli?
On pitfalls, definitely Ashutosh. I think happy to wear some of our failures and learnings on our sleeve in this entire journey. And let me quickly recount a few. Number one, RPA can't solve for process gaps or system gaps, right? They can solve for inefficiencies in people, processes, and so on and so forth. But if something doesn't exist in the system, RPA can't build that for you, right? It has to exist. You can only automate some of these processes. I think that's one mistake people make in assuming stuff. Number one. Number two, your governance model. So your core systems are what they are. You call them legacy, you call them whatever. RPA is built on top, right? What happens is sometimes these are two different product managers, two different teams. So if your core system changes, your automation script is bound to fail, right? And hence that sense of collaboration, communication between various teams, especially in multi-geography organizations. Like for us, we have an India team, we have a team in our headquarters in Beijing, and so on and so forth. So communication that, look, I'm dependent on your system. If you change something, my process is going to break, my script is going to break, that becomes important. So the core systems will change. You have to be prepared for it. Number three, your biggest friend and maybe your biggest challenge is going to be your internal controls and data security teams, right? You have to get them on board from day one, because for them, all of a sudden, like a bot logging into systems, putting password, accessing data, mailing stuff, etc., etc. I mean, this is like too much sci-fi, right? So you need to get them on board from day one. Their fears.
I know of an organization who started issuing identity cards to bots as well.
Right.
So security,
and some of the more basic stuff, right? I mean, design for scalability. Have monitoring of the bot in place. Look, bot runs on a machine. It is technology. It will fail, right? If you don't have the right monitoring system, one fine morning you'll come in the office at 9 o'clock and realize that from 1 a.m. Your bot hasn't been running, and all the overnight stuff, the processing of invoices that need to get done have not got done. So you need basic monitoring systems in place. I mean, so many wonderful lessons that we have learned. Happy to tell a longer story at some other day.
You may want to write a book on that. A lot of people will buy it. Great, thanks. As I come to the close, I hand it over to Anupam, and I really thank for such an interesting discussion.
Yeah.
Yes, Kersi, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I was
Are you saying something,
hearing it. There is one like lessons learned I would try and say is don't depend on the vendors and your partners to make you successful. This process has to be your own processes, unless you, because they can only give you expertise of the tool. Because many a times people blame the tools, like it says, bad carpenter blames his tools. It's very well apt in this kind of a thing, because whatever does not work, people blame it on the tool. Because, and for that, to make the tool run, you might have to do a lot of business process re-engineering, because you might be doing something which is manual for so many days that was convenient to you. Probably the system can give you a better tool, so you need to have an open mindset that we have to change this process, and with this tool we can make it much better. I think that's where the challenges come in, because when we are doing automation, suddenly people saying you are making us change a lot of stuff which we are doing it for large. And as a drill, as a best practice, what we have been doing, and I think I would recommend, is once a week or once in a fortnight, we stop our automation process and tell people to do it manually. Okay, so that, just like he said, if one day the tool does not work for XYZ reason, people should not forget how manual processes are being to be followed. So I think so no, it's just we have consciously do this drill so that operations are so critical, because at times if this fellow goes mad or something, so it's ultimately a bot, or if it does not work, or if it's not work, I should not have a person that he does not know what is to, because I was told for 10 days only just press this button. The rest everything was done by the system. So if this, so I think this is one watch that people should be aware, that don't depend fully on automation. Always keep your manual as a backup plan. Is the best process is, so you can only automate what you can do best manually. So that is the underlying philosophy.
Yeah, very interesting point and very funnily put, but that's true. Resorting to your old practices sometimes keeps you alive better. That's all right. We also took some time to understand this very tool, AirMeet, because initially I thought I was reluctant. Now I'm quite familiar. I understand where to push which button is. So, Anupam, are you good to take over? Because I just want to thank my panelists, Amit, Kersi, and Murli, for an interesting discussion. And I hope there were some good points that the audience could pick up.
Yes,
And
Ashutosh, I'm here. If you want to have a closing statement also, you can go ahead and do that.
My closing statement is simple, that enterprises should look at automation as an option if you have not started. There will be, and it's not that it is a new tool, it's been around now. People have adopted this, and partners, any partner would be able to take you through the journey. As Kersi rightly said, that we shouldn't blame the partner, and as a vendor, I am quite happy to hear that. But bottom line is, there are many ways to learn. One important pitfall is that you must have your workforce aligned mentally and technically, which means certify, get them ready so that they understand what's happening. And let this be seen as something which is a skill set upgrade for them. That is the best support that you can get. And lastly, always have a champion which is from the domain, which is like a CFO or a CHRO or someone like that. Your life will be far more easier in an enterprise organization. So thank you so much, all my panelists, and I hope to talk to you again. Thanks for giving us this platform, and I hand it over back to Anupam. Bye.
Thank you so much, Ashutosh. Thank you for being there and be moderating this session. And also to all the panelists over here, thank you so much from different enterprises, from different sectors. We have uh, we have had Bombay Stock Exchange coming up, Xiaomi, and as well we have SBI at the same platform and discussing about automation for different enterprises. I'm pretty sure a lot of people would have taken a lot of output from this. Thank you so much for being over here. I'm closing this session over here right now, and I'll be moving on to the next session. That will be a presentation by Jitendra Agarwal. So thank you so much, gentlemen. Thank you.
Gentlemen,
Thank
thank
you.
you, and thanks everybody who attended
Thank
this.
you.
Good day.